door closes somewhere in the dark. Outside, voices are still laughing, still singing, still drunk on celebration. Inside, the house has gone strangely quiet. Oil lamps burn low. Incense curls into the ceiling beams. And in the centre of the room stands a girl who has been awake since before sunrise. Hours ago, she was a daughter. Now, by law, by ritual, by the will of everyone around her, she is something else entirely. She is a wife. The knot at her waist has not yet been untied. Her hair is still stiff with the tight braids forced into it at dawn. Somewhere beyond the walls, the crowd is still shouting crude verses about what they expect to happen next. But for a moment, just a moment, everything pauses, because this night is not simply the end of a celebration. It is the final step in a system that has been preparing her entire life. When most people imagine weddings in the ancient world, they picture ceremonies that feel strangely familiar. A gathering of families, a feast, gifts exchanged. Perhaps a bride carried over a threshold, a tradition that somehow survived into modern culture. But in ancient Rome, marriage was not primarily about romance, companionship, or even personal choice. It was about power, and every stage of the wedding ceremony was designed to make that power visible. The day began before the sun appeared over the rooftops of the city. In a quiet room lit by early morning lamps, the bride's family gathered around her. Mothers, attendants, household servants, no musicians yet, no guests, only the careful preparation of a ritual that had been repeated for centuries. Then someone produced an object that seemed strangely out of place at a wedding. A spear. Not a decorative symbol, not a polished prop for ceremony. Ancient writers suggest it was often an actual weapon, sometimes even one taken from battle. With it, the bride's hair was parted into 6 sections, slowly, carefully, strand by strand. The style imitated the sacred hairstyle of Rome's Vestal Virgins, priestesses who guarded the eternal flame of the city. But the tool used to create it was not sacred, it was violent. Roman authors themselves debated the meaning of this strange tradition. Some claimed it honoured Mars, the god of war, hoping the marriage would produce strong sons. Others believed it recalled the martial spirit of Rome itself. But another explanation appears again and again in Roman writing. The spear was a reminder of how Rome believed marriage began. According to Rome's own founding legend, the earliest Roman men had a problem. The new city was full of soldiers, settlers, and fugitives, but almost no women. Neighbouring communities refused to allow their daughters to marry Romans. So the story goes that Rome's founder, Romulus, organised a festival. Games were announced, neighbouring families were invited. People arrived expecting diplomacy and celebration. Instead, at a signal, Roman men seized the visiting women and carried them away. The story is remembered as the abduction of the Sabine women. In Roman art and literature, it appears again and again. Men lifting women, dragging them away while families scream in the background. To modern audiences, it feels brutal. To Romans, it was heroic. They told the story as the moment their civilization began. And in subtle ways, every traditional Roman wedding reenacted it. By midday, the house filled with noise. Guests arrived, garlands were hung, food was prepared. The bride put on a saffron-coloured veil called the flammeum, its fiery colour meant to symbolise transformation. Then came the public ceremony. Standing before witnesses, the bride and groom spoke a short formula that sounded deceptively simple. "Where you are, Gaius, I am Gaia." At first glance, it sounds like a poetic vow, but its deeper meaning was unmistakable. Where you go, I follow. Your identity becomes mine. Your household becomes my world. Because under Roman law, marriage did not unite 2 families as equals. It transferred authority. From the moment a Roman girl was born, she existed under the legal control of a male guardian, usually her father. This authority, known as patria potestas, was sweeping. It governed property, family decisions, even marriage itself. When she married, that authority passed to her husband. The ceremony simply made the transfer visible, but the most dramatic moment was still to come. As evening approached, the celebration transformed into something closer to theatre. The bride's friends gathered around her. The groom approached, and then, in front of both families, he seized her. Not gently. Ancient writers describe a deliberate display of force. The bride was expected to cry out, to struggle, to appear reluctant as she was pulled away from her mother. Romans insisted this was symbolic, a harmless reenactment of ancient myth. But imagine experiencing it from the bride's perspective. You are young. The crowd is loud. A man stronger than you grabs your arm and pulls you toward the street while everyone cheers. At what point does ritual stop feeling like theatre? The procession that followed moved through Rome like a strange parade. Torchbearers led the way, filling the streets with flickering orange light. Musicians played sharp, echoing melodies on flutes. Behind them walked the couple, surrounded by shouting friends and curious spectators. And the songs were infamous. They were called fescennine verses, improvised chants filled with crude jokes and explicit references to the wedding night. Guests shouted them openly, laughing as they described what awaited the bride once the procession ended. To Romans, this was entertainment. To the girl at the centre of the crowd, it must have sounded very different. Children ran alongside the procession. Nuts were thrown into the street as fertility symbols. Boys carried spinning tools ahead of the bride, reminders of the domestic life waiting for her. Every detail reinforced the same message. Your old life is ending. Your new one has already been decided. When the group finally reached the groom's house, another ritual awaited at the doorway. The bride could not step across the threshold herself. Instead, the groom lifted her and carried her inside. Today, the gesture survives in wedding traditions around the world, usually explained as romantic. A groom sweeping his bride into their new home. But the Roman origin was less sentimental. Partly, it avoided bad omens. Tripping over the threshold was considered disastrous for the marriage. But it also echoed the founding myth once more. A woman entering a household, not by choice, but by capture. Inside, the noise of the street faded. The lamps burned low. Incense thickened the air. And there, placed prominently in the central hall of the house, stood the marriage bed. It was not hidden away in a private room. It stood in the atrium, the semi-public heart of the home, where guests and clients would normally gather. The message was unmistakable. This union mattered to the household, to the family line, to the future. A respected married woman known as the pronuba led the bride to the bed. Her role was symbolic. She represented the ideal Roman wife. Faithful, modest, married only once. Then the groom approached. Around the bride's waist was a woolen belt tied with an intricate knot, known as the Knot of Hercules. It symbolized protection, virginity, and the boundary between childhood and marriage. Only the husband could untie it. Ancient writers describe the knot as intentionally complicated. It took time to loosen, and while he worked at it, the bride waited. When the knot finally opened, the ritual was complete. The girl who had woken before dawn was gone. In her place stood a Roman wife, legally absorbed into her husband's household, expected to bear children, manage the home, and uphold the honour of the family name. For Romans, this transformation was not tragic, it was normal. That may be the most unsettling part of the story. None of these rituals were hidden. They were not crimes whispered about in secret. They were traditions celebrated by one of the most powerful civilizations in history. Rome built roads across continents, engineered aqueducts that still stand today, and developed legal systems that influence the modern world. But it also built social structures that placed women firmly under male authority. Marriage was simply where that structure became most visible. Over time, Roman law evolved. Later marriages sometimes allowed women greater independence. Wealthy Roman women could own property, manage estates, even influence politics indirectly. But the symbolism of the old rituals lingered long after the legal system began to change. Because rituals are powerful, they shape how people understand their roles in society. And once a ritual becomes tradition, it can survive long after its original meaning fades. Centuries later, many Roman customs quietly disappeared. Religious changes altered ceremonies, new cultural values replaced old ones. The empire itself eventually collapsed. Yet fragments of these ancient practices still echo today. A bride being given away, a groom carrying his bride across a threshold, a wedding treated as the beginning of a new household identity. Most of these traditions have been reshaped into something gentler, something mutual, something chosen. But their origins remind us how different the past could be. History is not a collection of comforting stories. It is a record of real systems, real beliefs, real lives shaped by rules that once seemed perfectly natural to the people who lived within them. And sometimes, the most revealing place to see those systems at work is not on a battlefield or in a Senate chamber. It is in a wedding, in a quiet room, with a knot slowly coming undone. If stories like this change the way you look at the past, consider subscribing for more deeply researched explorations of history's hidden corners. And if there's a figure, culture, or event you think deserves a closer look, share it in the comments. The past still holds many stories we haven't fully faced yet.